As a mobile mechanic, I am frequently having customers tell me an issue with their car, and around no starts, most of them are misdiagnosed, either by other mechanics, by them, by ChatGPT/AI. People throw a battery in the car, then an alternator, then the starter, and they're still stuck, or the starter worked and the battery and the alternator did nothing. I'm going to show you the exact order I use to diagnose a no start with this $8 Harbor Freight multimeter. Now, any multimeter works, and if you're a mobile mechanic, $8, this will make you look like a professional, and you'll know if it's the battery, the alternator, or the starter. This is literally all you need to diagnose a bad battery, or an alternator, or a starter. So I'm going to tell you how to set up your multimeter, what numbers to look for based on what you're looking for or looking at, and what they actually mean. So before you begin, and this is my car, I actually noticed it was slow to start the other day. So I'm gonna check the battery and the alternator and the starter. But before you begin, make sure you're parked, parking brake is on, keeping your hands and clothes away from any belts, fans, anything with the engine. You're just trying to work with the battery to start. And we're only checking the voltage of the battery, and it's super simple. So with this multimeter, I'm going to have the red plugged into the ohms and the black down here. That's going to create that circuit. I'm going to set it to direct current. That's what this DCV stands for, and I'm going to set it to 20. And that's all you need. So you can turn it on. You can see it's reading 0. Red is your positive, black is going to be your negative. So with it set to 20 volts, when I read the battery, I'm going to be looking for about 12.6 volts for a healthy battery. Now, I haven't driven my car in a while. It's not a bad idea to do this though either way, but if you've driven your car recently, the very first thing you want to do is remove any resting voltage. So if the car's been sitting and you have a healthy full charged battery, usually around 12.6, but if you just drove it, that means the battery was just charged from your alternator, and it can have something called surface charge. So it can trick you to thinking, oh, I have a good battery, but really you're just reading the surface charge. So to get rid of the surface charge, you want to turn your lights on, your radio, just use the power in your car for about 2 minutes, and then you can turn it all off. All right, so 20 volts. I'm gonna go ahead and test my battery. So I'm gonna put it on the post of the battery, positive to positive. You'll see a plus, often, or red. And then here's my negative. I'm gonna put it on my negative side. And then that's gonna tell me my voltage right now. And my voltage of my battery, you can see it right there, 12.26, 25, 27, 26, 25, 26. So my battery is low. So 12.6 to 12.8 volts generally means a full healthy battery. Now I'm going to get to how it could not be. 12.4 is going to be about 75% charged. 12.2 is about 50% charged, and 12 volts or less is basically a dead battery. It might still work, but it's definitely a sign that either your alternator is not recharging it, or you have a parasitic draw, or the battery's bad. So if I did a discharge and I'm at 12.6 reading, after that, the voltage is good, but that doesn't necessarily mean the battery is good. So the next step is we want to test the battery under load. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these on the battery terminals, and I'm going to crank the engine. I'm going to start the car. So a good rule of thumb is it should stay around 10 volts or higher while cranking. If it drops to 9, 8, or lower, the battery can't deliver the amps anymore, and what people call bad cold cranking amps. So a battery will have cold cranking amps, and that's all that is. So you might be holding a 12.6 charge, but if you're dropping below 10, the battery can't deliver the power to the car to get it to turn over. And a little tip, if the voltage is 12.6 you crank it, it stays above 10, but it cranks slow, that can be a starter, a cable / ground, and it's not going to be your battery. And we'll get into how to test for those as well. One more thing, and that is that temperature matters in like freezing weather, or if you live in a very cold climate, you'll see bigger drops in your amps when you go to crank. But if it's warm, you shouldn't see really that much of a drop, or it should stay above 10. And they make batteries for colder weather where it has higher cold cranking amps. And so, you know, it still should stay about above 10. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and test the cold cranking amps. I set my phone up so I can look at it separate of the recording because it's just me. So I can't really hold these. So they do make these leads where they have like an alligator clamp, so you can it can grab on and bite the terminals so you can get a better reading. But if I can squeeze these in, or have it resting. All right, so I'm gonna go turn the car over. I shouldn't see this drop below 10. If I do, that means the amperage is not able to deliver enough power. So let me go do that. All right, and in doing that, my phone fell. So I'm gonna check the recording and see if I'm able to see it. All right, so on my phone, as it fell, I saw it get to about like 12 or 10.18, somewhere around there. So I'll check up here, but I think the cold cranking amps is fine. All right, so while cranking, if it's greater than 10 volts, the battery load test passes. If while cranking it's below 10, but say like 9.6, the battery is likely weak. And then if it's really below that at all at cranking, you know, it's just a bad battery. And then if it's okay, let's say it's 10, but it's cranking slowly, that is either your starter, your cables, or your grounds. A few other things to check before you condemn your starter is to check your connections. These, if you wiggle them and there's movement, it slides. See how this isn't sliding? Mine are nice and tight, but if it wiggles, you want to tighten them. You don't want to be able to slide it around. Also, if you see corrosion, like green stuff or white stuff build up, that will mess with the connections. Or if they're dirty, you might want to get some sandpaper and sand off the connections, because a bad connection with your battery might give you the same symptoms as a bad starter. All right, so before I begin showing you how to test for your alternator to make sure it's charging your battery, I wanted to show you how you can find if you have a bad ground. So you're going to take your multimeter, and you're going to want to put your negative on the negative terminal. Then you're going to want to put a positive somewhere on some metal part of the engine. So like this is just a cover, it's plastic on most cars if you don't know that. And underneath is your engine. So in this case, this has plastic like upper plenum. I'm going to want to put this, there's metal right here. So I put it on the metal here. And again, if I had the alligator clips, that would help. And then I'm going to put it on the negative. And then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to crank your engine. And if you see a jump in your volts on your multimeter, that means you have a bad ground somewhere in your engine, and that's a problem. So it could just be your terminal is loose on your battery, but you have other ground connection points on your engine, and it just means that one of them is loose. All right, so to test your alternator, what you're gonna do is you're gonna get your engine started. You're gonna crank your engine over, if you can, right? So if you need to get it jumped, run it for a little bit. And then test your alternator is you're gonna put your positive and your negative on, and then you're gonna read the voltage. It should be reading at 14, over 14. That means that you have a good alternator. So like I would say maybe high 13s, like 13.8 to 14.7, that's your alternator charging your battery. Now if it's below 13.5, that means your alternator is probably going, or it's not really charging your battery all that well. And then if it's 12 point something while running, you basically are running off the battery and your alternator isn't doing its job. Now another thing to look out for is if you're seeing 15 plus volts, that can be a bad regulator, can be a bad alternator, and that can cook your battery. You can have too much. And then a third thing to look out for, and I'll see if, let me put this down, see if I can move my camera, is your alternator runs off of something called your serpentine belt. So if you're seeing that your alternator is not able to charge your battery, one other thing to look for or look at is your serpentine belt. It is generally on the passenger side or the front of the engine, and there's a belt that's spinning on all these things down here, and that thing right there is my alternator, right at the top of the engine. And if the belt is loose, it won't be able to charge spin the alternator. That's how it gets its power, and so the alternator won't really deliver the voltage it needs to your battery to charge it. So one, see if it's wobbly or loose, if the belt is walking, and then with the engine off, you can also check the tension of the belt. If it moves more than an inch, that means you have a bad tensioner, and it just means you have a loose belt, and that's making it so that your alternator can't charge your battery. Alright, so our next check is you're going to want to turn on your radio, turn on your lights. I turned on my high beams, turned on my inside car lights, so I have things running within the car. Now we're going to come back to the engine, and we're going to test the battery, aka actually the alternator, because your car runs off the alternator when it's driving. Alright, so a little funny because we're testing for our battery, and my camera battery keeps dropping. But here, we have accessories running, and it's okay to see the voltage drop a little bit. My radiator fan keeps turning on, and that keeps dropping in a bit. But I'm saying you want to stay in like the high 13s to 14s. If it falls towards the 12 or low 13s with the accessories on, that means your alternator is weak. So if it keeps dying, even though the alternator check is fine, the battery tests come out fine, but it's dead every morning, that probably means you have something called a parasitic drain or parasitic draw, or the battery is just old. So, you know, if it's 4 to 6 years old, that's a common life depending on like where you live, what climate. Also look for like lights staying on or aftermarket stuff, like if you have an aftermarket radio, phone chargers, glove box, trunk light. There's various things that if they stay on, it can drain your battery overnight. So I'll have to do a parasitic draw test. I will link that down in the description below. So if you end up having that issue where it's dead every morning, check there. I'll put it down there once I create it. And yeah. Thanks for watching. This is a very cheap tool. Again, if you've heard of a store called Harbor Freight, it is $8. It's very much worth it for you to figure out if you have a bad alternator, battery, bad ground. And I didn't really talk about starter that much, but if your car is slow to crank and you don't have a bad ground, it's probably your starter going. And if your car doesn't turn over at all and you just hear like a click, or even not even a click, it just doesn't do anything, it's probably your starter. Especially if you try to do a jump and the jump doesn't do anything. So another sign, I just thought of this, another sign of a bad starter is your lights work, the electronics work, but you just have nothing, or you have a click. That's another sign that it's your starter. And another easy way to tell if your battery's going too is to have your lights run for about 2 minutes, go to turn the key, and if the lights dim significantly, that's a sign that your battery is bad as well. That's just a little extra pro tip. So I'm gonna go ahead and put a cheat sheet up here on the screen for anyone that wants to look and or take a screenshot of just the steps that I go through and that we talked about in this video. So the next time your car won't start, run these tests and you'll know what to replace, right? If it's related to one of these components, if it's your battery, your alternator, or your starter. Your car might not start because of a bad fuel pump or fuel lines. There's various other things. A car needs air, it needs gas, and it needs spark and compression. So if your car's not starting, it's often one of those. We're talking about things that relate to the spark mostly, and the starter helps get the engine turned over. to begin that whole process. So once you get past that and you're and it's not starting, it could be a whole other list of things. So I'll probably do a video on that as well, but this is just to get your car to get to that point. So if you want to comment below what your readings are, whether it's cold, cranking, running, I'll let you know what I think. And then also, if you're a mechanic or mobile mechanic starting out, you got to pick up one of these. $8 makes you seem like a professional, and you'll be able to diagnose people's cars really easily and even show them. I show people all the time, hey, this is what I'm looking for, this number, this is the number I'm getting, that means this. So, that being said, I'll leave a like, subscribe for more, and I will catch you all in the next one. Have a good one.